Welcome everybody to the third episode of the Void Wave podcast, and on today's episode we are going to discuss The Boys Season 1. And just a little bit of a disclaimer in the beginning, we are going to do like at least some pretty big spoilers for Season 1, so if you haven't watched Season 1 of The Boys, you might want to pause right here and come back eventually.
Yeah, definitely come back later because we're going to dissect The Boys Season 1. We know that Season 2 is already ongoing. There's, at the time of us recording this, there have been 4 episodes out already, but we're only going to discuss Season 1 as if we hadn't watched Season 2, right? As in Season 1 is self-contained show. There's also, so obviously this is based on a comic book series, and we just talking about the TV show as if it was like a Season 1, like a self-contained, like a very long movie that takes like 10 hours to watch. Although, of course, we will go at some point talk about the comic books and how they relate to the TV show, but mostly we're talking about just the single media.
Yeah, I guess just to start off a little bit of the general stuff about the show. It's made by a guy called Eric Kripke. The only thing I've seen he made was Supernatural, which is also a TV show, which is, kind of lighthearted, like horror-ish show. Doesn't take itself very seriously, but it's definitely enjoyable. I found it enjoyable to watch. And he made The Boys for Amazon Studios.
Yeah, so the life of a series creator in kind of American media production. Usually we can imagine that Kripke had been working on several other projects that never got made, so it's really hard to tell for any creator really in American TV shows what they really like or don't like, because we only get to see stuff that's been approved by dozens and dozens of people before it gets to our TV screens, right? So
true, yeah.
Even though there's like a big difference between The Boys and Supernatural, we can imagine Kripke paying his dues in Supernatural and then getting the rewards of doing The Boys, right? So it's very hard to establish an author when authors in this media at least are so constrained by production requirements. And we can imagine we couldn't find a budget for The Boys, but it's easy to imagine like every episode costing like a couple of $1 million, right?
Yeah, I mean they were able to afford like some pretty high profile actors and stuff, and like the special effects don't look too horrible for like the small screen. That's usually something.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I mean even like the CGI blood, sometimes you can tell it's CGI, but it's not by any means like horrible to watch. Like it works.
Yeah,
it definitely works. So you're assuming the budget isn't that low.
Yeah. So what is The Boys? So The Boys is basically a TV show following this kind of well-trodden path. That asks the question, what if superheroes really existed in our world, right? So what would happen if these superpower beings existed in a world that kind of obeys the rules of our contemporary world instead of being set in this kind of four-color superhero type setting where morality is very black and white and where all cops are good and where criminals are really, really bad and deserve their punishment. So this obviously has been an area that's been very well explored. We've had like stuff like The Watchmen in the late 80s, early 90s, right?
Right, yeah. I've seen quite a few people compare it to Alan Moore's Watchmen. I'm not really sure how I like that comparison because, yes, I can see why people say that, but I still think The Watchmen is quite a bit different.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think it's just the same kind of base idea and selling points.
Like it's
right?
definitely both a criticism or like a commentary on like the tropes and the archetypes of the superhero genre in a way.
Yeah. Well, and since I've got people's attention on this with this podcast, can I just recommend another show about what if superheroes were real? Sorry, not a show, a comic book called Martial Law, from released in kind of the mid 80s. It's really good, right? Sorry, just wanted to put that in. Anybody like stuff like The Boys will definitely like Martial Law, which never got made into a TV or a movie. So The Boys. So this is a world where super beings exist, but unfortunately they're regular people, hence the premise of the show, except for their superpowers. and they are usually up to no good. Weirdly, in this world, almost all of these superheroes are American, and this is explained later because they were created by a pharmaceutical company called Vought that exposed children to a substance, a sort of MacGuffin, called Compound V that gave them superpowers. And these kind of the most powerful of these superheroes are part of Vought's superhero division, which operates just like any big corporation would operate. So they have contracts with American cities where they kind of station their superheroes there for protection. And there's also a superhero team called the Seven, which consists, as you can imagine, of 7 superheroes, sort of like a Justice League, a mockery of the Justice League. And those 7 seem to have like the ability and the jurisdiction to act anywhere in the USA and fight crime, I guess.
Yeah, and they are basically almost with like 1 or 2 exceptions, maybe like set up to be the primary antagonists of the show. Like they're definitely not the good guys. Like they're generally very horrible human beings and pretty horrible at being superheroes as well. Like they usually cause a lot of collateral damage, quote unquote, which then has to be swept under the rug by what company?
So the public and the government kind of, they love the 7, right? And they love the other superheroes, even if they're not in the 7. So they give them like a free pass on a lot of the bad stuff they do. And so there's this group that was initially set up by the CIA, which is crazy. Imagining the CIA being the hero of a story.
Yeah, that immediately raises some eyebrows if you make the CIA the good guys in your comic, but okay.
Yeah. Imagine how bad the bad guys must be for the CIA to be the good guys. So there's this group that's been kind of on the down low, been set up by the CIA to fight these superheroes, or at least kind of try to investigate them and kind of find bad things about them so they can be exposed and this kind of hegemony of the superheroes end. And they're like a mix of very different people, and they're effectively the protagonists of our story and pretty much the titular characters, right? The boys is this group of men.
Yeah, it's like a funny name for a CIA Black Ops crew, but I guess it's like a code name or something, like the boys. But they don't really go into that too much in the show. I think in the comics they expand a little bit on the background of the boys and how they originally got together and what they were doing. But the comic is quite different from the show in that regard.
Yeah, on the TV show they kind of just hint at some past events, right?
Yeah,
they talk about, remember when Frenchie, who's one of the boys, messed up with the lamplighter and got these children killed, right?
Yeah, so, there are little hints here and there as to what happened and why there's like pre-existing tensions between some of the characters and stuff, but they don't go into it super deep. Yeah.
Yeah, so this TV show, before we get into kind of the themes, I guess, this TV show has some interesting stuff right off the bat. And that is, it's set up like a parody of superheroes. Like you can tell who's who. Like, there's a character that's like evil Superman. There's a character that's like very hesitant and disillusioned Wonder Woman. And then there's a character that's like cold-blooded and murderous Batman. There's like all these kind of references to superheroes from our canon. But even though it's a parody, the show has a lot of gore, so it has a lot of violence. And I think the way the violence is presented is not meant for it to be cartoony, because we do get to see the impact of this violence on people, right? So it's not like Tom and Jerry.
No, not at all. The show has a lot of dark humor, and it's supposed to be funny in places, but it's also supposed to be like serious sometimes, right? And usually with the gore stuff, that sometimes play a little bit for comedic effect, but then as you said, like in the aftermath, you usually see how that violence you just witnessed on screen affects people, like real people. And that kind of subverts like this way superhero movies or the genre in general deals with this kind of violence, right? Because in like Superman movies or whatever, you see him fly around, or even in like the more recent DCU, MCU movies, like there's a lot of violence and destruction going on, but you don't really see the consequences of that. Like, the Avengers like fighting like evil robot aliens in the city and wrecking the whole city and stuff. And then The Boys, you kind of see how that affects people more directly. Especially in the beginning when they're trying to set up like the one of the main characters, who's called Huey, played by Jack Quaid, and he's just like he's the everyday guy character, like the person the audience is supposed to identify with, I guess. And his girlfriend gets basically ran down by a superhero called A-Train. He's like the Flash knockoff. Like he can run super fast, and he's also a drug addict. And while he's high, he just runs through his girlfriend and explodes her all over the scene. And that's basically
that causes a strange reaction, because when that happened, I wasn't sure if I should laugh or be sad.
Yeah, that's what I meant earlier.
Because it's very over the top.
Yeah, it's super over the top, and that's what I meant. Like sometimes it's played for like somewhat of a comedic value, like obviously a dark comedy, but then in the end, when you see how Huey is dealing with all of this and how it leads to him eventually get recruited by Butcher, Carl Urban's character, into The Boys, you also see how that progressively, like going down that path, progressively affects his mental health and stuff. Like it's not violence for violence sake. Like it really has consequences for these characters.
Okay, so keeping to the theme of our podcast, I think one of the first things I would like to talk about would be perhaps kind of the presence and effect of capitalism in the world of The Boys. So, the phrase we repeat, I think even it's episode 3 and we've said this a bunch of times, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism, right? So the boys the superheroes exist in a world of capitalism, and they're basically employees of a mega corporation called Vought, and they've been kind of completely commodified by Vought. They become like products. In the beginning of the story, the way the show begins, people think superheroes are just born, right? It's just something like, I don't know, in their genes, or they get bit by a radioactive spider or something. I don't know. Each hero has their kind of origin story. It's only later it's revealed that they've been exposed to an artificial chemical.
Yeah, exactly. That like somebody blows the whistle on it essentially, and then it gets out. But I think in the beginning, the official story is that they are essentially God's chosen people, and that it's God who is endowing them with their powers and stuff. But I'm not sure if that's the official story for all of them, or just the more Christian-related heroes, which we're gonna get into a little bit later.
Yeah, the Vought kind of produces them because they kind of injected compound V on babies and fetuses, I guess. Even though that was in secret, they groomed them to be superheroes. They represent them as sort of an agent, an employer, and that they contract them out, create branding of them, and all that. And I think this is, for lack of a better term, I think it's super realistic. I think this is probably what would happen if we got superheroes, because the superheroes we have at the moment are people who, are very good at sports and who are much better than normal people would be at sports, or better at looking good than most people, or better at whoever has an agent, right? And they, whoever kind of stands out in that way has a tendency to be immediately commodified in several ways. But in the case of the world of The Boys, the superheroes are kind of commodified only by this company, who kind of exploits them as sort of employees. They're never self-employed, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's always Vought who forms these different teams of superheroes, and the biggest team and the most important one is obviously the 7, which is the 7 most powerful or most valuable superheroes, I guess, even in terms of money, because there are some heroes or supes on the team who aren't actually that powerful. Like the Deep, he's like an Aquaman-ish token aquatic hero. And like his power is not that amazing. Like he can breathe underwater because he has gills, and he can talk to aquatic animals, and that's about it. Like other than that, he's just a dick who harasses women sexually and has serious self-esteem issues.
Yeah, not very smart.
And like the reason he is on the team is because they need quote unquote an aquatic hero. Like for
it's also funny that kind of this compound V affects people different ways, so you never know who's gonna get what kind of superpower.
Oh yeah, right? It seems to be random, yeah.
People can get like very crap superpowers, and others get really good hand. And I find, so the topic of capitalism, I find really interesting that these beings who are so exceptional and outstanding, they cannot kind of feel the independence to go out on their own and create their own companies or their own, kind of be independent in some way. All of them kind of look to the big corporations. They look for employment. They look for a way to kind of monetize themselves. Like literally in this story, I don't think there ever is a hero who does, I guess, the kind of vigilante stuff that superheroes do, right?
Yeah.
In the comic books.
I think the only soup is by the way, like the short for superhero. That's the term they use in the show. And the only soup that shows like some kind of self-employment, I guess, is what's his face, Mesmer, the Mesmer guy, who can read people's minds, and he's doing some shady stuff at the side apparently.
Yeah, but not being very successful for somebody who can read other people's minds.
Like he's shown as like a kind of washed up superhero who gives autograph at conventions and stuff with not many people showing up.
Yeah. So on the representation of capitalism, you have a character who kind of represents that, who's the VP and who handles superheroes. Her character is called Madeline Stilwell. I found her, in terms of her employment and what she does for Vought, I found her kind of a bit boring, right?
Yeah.
She's very manipulative, but she kind of stays within the lines of what this company's objective. So her personality is mostly defined by being very greedy.
Yeah, like she,
I guess.
Like the way I felt about her is that she more or less fully identifies with the corporation. Like that's her whole identity. And she's basically there as, for one, to manage the Seven first and foremost, and she's also like Homelander's nanny and love interest in a way. Like the two have a really strange relationship going on, which we can maybe talk a little bit about more when we talk about Homelander, who is the Superman knockoff guy.
And in some ways it's interesting because she's so successful in her professional career, but then she has a very empty family life. So she's a geriatric mother as well. She's given birth very recently, and I don't know. It's kind of a strange representation. She's not very two-dimensional, I guess. She's pretty much. But in terms of product and capitalism, I think it's interesting that, you know, if Vought has the superheroes and they have like the technology to make the superheroes, they could probably sell kind of compound V in small doses. And that would be like the ultimate consumer product. Oh yeah, right. I think that would make a lot more money than superheroes.
Yeah, that was something that I found kind of odd because like Vought is like it's not a government contract. It's not a public company. Like it's a private shareholder company. Like there's one scene where Stilwell, you know, has this little speech in front of the shareholders at the annual shareholder meeting and whatnot. And yeah, it's really strange that they are not trying to market their product in other countries, because what they are is, like, on the surface they are like a pharmaceutical company and a superhero management company, for lack of a better term, but what they actually are, or what I would call them, is that they are weapon manufacturers essentially, because these superheroes are the way in which they are used as living weapons, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it would make sense to you know, spread that around a little bit.
They're all Americans, right?
Yeah.
All superheroes are Americans, which is kind of strange because any pharmaceutical company the size of Vought would operate globally. Yeah, right?
I mean, they're even called Vought International in the show, I think.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah, in the comics they're called Vought America, funnily enough. But for some reason they only operate within America, and really seem to be interested in expanding their market opportunities, which doesn't really make sense from a capitalistic point of view. So that was a little bit off.
In effect, they own the atomic bomb, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The secret to the atomic bomb.
They basically have the monopoly on the most powerful weapon to date.
Yeah, I mean, if it can produce Superman knockoffs and not just people who have gills, of course. But they could produce potentially thousands and thousands of superheroes, right? Yeah. And create like an army from scratch. Which brings me to another point that's kind of reflected in the show, and I think it's a topic that's going to become more and more relevant as the years goes on, which is related to gene editing and transhumanism. So Compound V is, I guess, a very kind of cartoonish way of doing gene editing. You know, you put the super serum in the soldier and then they become Captain America.
Yeah, it's probably not that easy in the real world, but yeah. It definitely goes into the direction of transhumanism or designer babies, if you will. Yeah. Although they're not really designed because their powers seem to be random.
Yeah, and that's something that's curious, isn't it? Because they get like these random powers. So some people get, you know, good powers, others get like the short end of the stick, and we can imagine that there's lots of babies who died during this procedure, or who got, you know, mutations that made their lives very bad, but we never get to hear about those.
Yeah, I mean, there's one scene in the show where Homelander discusses like his own little side plot, where he secretly ships out Compound V to terrorist groups all around the world because he wants to get the Seven into the military officially and stuff. And there he mentions that Vought usually experimented on small children or fetuses because that's apparently easier. And when he shipped it out to jihadis or whatever, they used it on adult human beings, and the fatality rate was apparently very high. But some of them survived. So yeah, it's definitely like ethically highly questionable experimentation on human subjects, which would never go through any kind of like green-lighted trial.
Yeah, but if it happened in our world, it would be like the atomic bomb, right?
Yeah, I mean, China is already doing it. Oh yes, I sound like Trump. It's China, guys. Yeah. China is doing it.
Yeah,
we
China's
need our
got
own
super babies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's gonna be the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, if one nation starts doing it, then the other nations need to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I mean, it's like the space race in a way, but with, you know, gene edited babies.
Yeah, and I think that's like a fair reflection on what I think the future holds for us.
Yeah, it's.
I mean,
none
of this transhumanism that happens in the TV show, none of it is aimed at reducing suffering, right?
Right.
All of it is aimed at grabbing more power. And I think as a species, if we're given the option between reducing suffering, and grabbing more power for ourselves or our tribe or whatever we identify with, we're going to go with the latter option.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a very, very cynical take on transhumanism, but probably fairly accurate because like the name of the game is profit motive for what? Like they want to make money off of their product and protect their assets accordingly.
Yeah. Oh. In this case, this transhumanism is controlled by private enterprise. So, you know, there's really no other place to go with it, right? Yeah. I mean, they have no reason to do anything with this technology except do what they're doing now, right? And if they could use it, like, I don't know, to cure cancer or make paraplegics walk or whatever,
just make everybody
they would do it for profit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they would do it for profit. And I think with, you know, the actual real life application of transhumanism, even if it's not Compound V, obviously, nobody's going to get wings or shoot laser beams out of their eyes. I think with real life application, I don't believe in humanity enough to see that going in the best possible way. Although there'll be uses for it for sure.
I mean, there was always downsides and always like benefits to new technologies. But like overall, it's probably gonna be like heavily regulated by governments, and it's probably only gonna be available to people who can afford it at first. That's my guess. Like nobody knows for sure where this is going, but if I had to guess, that's what I would take.
So what you're saying is that the rich people of the future are going to be able to fly.
Maybe not that far.
Be super strong.
Maybe like enhanced physical strength, or just an absence of or like how do you say it? Like better predispositions in terms of illness, stuff like that. I think that's going to be the first stuff that's going to happen. And I mean, that's kind of what they already did with the babies in China. Like they removed some genetic markers which are responsible for some kind of hereditary disease, I think. And that sounds, harmless enough and kind of good on the surface, but if you can do that, you can probably do a lot of other shit too.
Yeah, and I would say if you can do that, but you don't share the technology on how to do that with other peoples, then it's not good.
Yeah, it's just gonna be like a thing more for privileged people than it will be something that's usher in the great utopia of the future or whatever.
Yeah, or something that can be used as a reward for those who are very obedient to whatever government has this makes this available.
Oh yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the route. That's kind of the route China is going down anyways with their social credit system and whatnot. And I don't think it's totally unconceivable that they would tie future genetic enhancements to having like a certain level of social credit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to prove that you're a good boy, and only if you're a good boy you get these benefits for your children.
Yeah, it's a kind of a sort of platonic nightmare where beauty equals knowledge and knowledge equals beauty, and the two are tied in together. Like if you're a good person, then your babies will be more beautiful than the babies of people who are not conceived to be ethically good in our social credit scheme.
Yeah. I mean that's a line I always say when this topic comes up. It's gonna be social divisions like manifested on the level of biology. Like that's how I think about it.
But hopefully not like this show, not this level of difference.
That would probably be like total mayhem if something like that were to
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's something that's always on the knife edge on this show, right?
Right.
And if you, I assume you've either read The Watchmen or watched the movie, right?
Yeah, I've seen the movie. And I watched a little bit of the show, but I didn't enjoy the show at all.
Yeah, I haven't watched the show yet, but I did read the comic book and the graphic novel, and the graphic novel at one point there's only one character effectively with superheroes in the whole book, right? Sorry for spoiling another thing for our listeners.
I mean, is that really a spoiler? I mean,
yeah, everybody knows
it's kind of his character, right? Like that.
Yeah,
that's
his character is the only character with superpowers, and he's very super powerful.
He is God, and essentially.
Yeah,
like he's all powerful.
He can create worlds out of nothing, right? And the question with him is, all the other countries hate the US because they know that the US can just send this guy over and just destroy their country in minutes. And I think in The Boys, the character of the Superman, the evil Superman, it's called Homelander. He would kind of completely tip the balance of international relations, just the existence of him, right? Because he's completely unstoppable by conventional military force.
Yeah, and there's like one scene where Stillwell, the Ward VP, has like a discussion with, I think it's a government official. I'm not sure if that's like an established character, but like he's kind of giving her shit for lying to them about the creation of the soups. And she kind of counters that with, well, we have Homelander. What are you gonna do about it, right? And she says something like they tried every weapon in their arsenal and it wasn't effective. So you can infer from that you could throw a nuke at him and he would just walk away just fine.
Yeah.
So he's immensely powerful, and that would, tip the balance in any kind of armed conflict.
Yeah, America could win any war, basically. Except, of course, the war that Homelander himself is trying to create that you mentioned, which is the war on terror, where he goes around and kind of hands over Compound V to various non-state actors to try to create supervillains. In fact, this guy is so obsessed with being a hero that he goes around creating supervillains to fight and tries to call everything he doesn't like a supervillain, right?
Yeah,
Instead of a criminal.
That was kind of funny because in the beginning I didn't really understand why he's doing it, but like it seemed to me like he's really just concerned with the image of superheroes, and he wants to be liked and he wants to be worshipped. And it seems like that's the main reason, besides the whole getting into the military thing, which is a bit shaky in my opinion, but the main reason seems to be his narcissism in a way.
Yeah, and it's kind of a god complex.
Oh yeah, he has a total god complex going on. But the whole subplot about getting the Supes into the military, that one was kind of strange, because I felt like they were already kind of in the military.
Yeah, they seem to have jurisdiction to do a lot of stuff that civilians can't do, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're like, assisting cops, but there's also like some talk about when one of the members of the Seven, he's called translucent, he's invisible, or he can turn himself invisible. It kind of reminded me of that one Paul Verhoeven film. What's it called? Hollow Man, I think, which is not a superhero film, so it's probably not inspired by that one. But it reminded me of it, and he gets captured by the boys and eventually killed. And at Vought, they're trying to come up with a good excuse why he's not around anymore. And when they're creating this cover story, they're saying, oh, he's abroad on a super secret special mission fighting MS-13, I think, or something like that. And that sounded like they are already cooperating with the military, kinda. So that was a bit strange.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a superhero show. Let's not ask too many questions.
True. I'm thinking too much. That's the issue.
Yeah. So they're already used by the state, right? So they have the defense contracts, or they want to get defense contracts, but they already do like these missions, right? They do the policing when Vought kind of leases them to cities in the United States. But they also do kind of extrajudicial killings as well. When kind of Homelander kind of kills this politician who wanted to negotiate too much and kind of blackmail Vought.
Oh yeah, why? How did he try to blackmail again? I think he knew.
Yeah, he knew about Compound V.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah. And Homelander, like, he flies after his plane and just blows it up with his laser eyes.
Yeah, and there's a child on board, and we're supposed that's right at the beginning, and that's when we're supposed to go, oh, he kills a child, so he's not a good one. He's not actual Superman. So anyway, in terms of the connection with them with the state, they also have these superheroes as celebrities in the US. They also have massive ties with religion, which for us two being Europeans, I would say Western Europe is a bit more secular than the United States, and not like in the way that in the United States every politician kind of needs to declare what religion they believe in. Yeah, and it's kind of weird if they're an atheist. And in the same way, these superheroes kind of have all these ties with religion, and they're kind of representatives of divinity, right? Religious people in this show would definitely believe that these powers were given by God, right? Yeah, so in that sense, they are kind of the embodiment of God's will, and they're impossible of doing bad things, which works out really well for them.
Yeah, and Homelander, he really plays that up a lot, like his belief in God and his patriotism are like totally fake, obviously, if you see the rest of the show, but he uses it in order to control and rile up the people as it suits him, in a way. And there's like this nice scene where they are at this like tent revival festival thing, and he's giving like his speech after that was after the plane got hijacked by actual terrorists, and Vought sends Homelander and Queen Maeve, the Wonder Woman knockoff, to stop them, but it goes wrong because Homelander kills all the terrorists and accidentally blows up the machinery in the cockpit, and he makes the call to bail out basically, and the plane crashes and everybody dies, and he uses that together with his patriotic and religious rhetoric to bring the people into this kind of fury and worship of him. Like he floats over the crowd in this crucifixion pose and stuff. I think that was executed quite nicely visually.
Yeah, I think Homelander is a secret monarchist.
Yeah, I mean he thinks
that's his end game.
Yeah, he may not genuinely believe in God, but he definitely feels like that he should be the guy who's in charge of everything. Like that's like the bottom line of his character, like his narcissism, and he tries to not only control the people, but also he tries to get more influence within the Vought company, and yeah.
And then he gets kind of, when he tries to, that's season 2, by the way. Sorry.
Oh man, he does that in season 1 too, like to some extent at least. I don't know. Do we want to spoil the ending of season 1?
If you.
I mean, it's not super important for the discussion, but yeah, he's always like he's shown, like he's very unhappy with his position in the company. Like he always feels like he should do more, should be in a higher up position, I guess. And Stillwell, who's there to kind of control him and keep him in line, controls him by like exploiting his weird sexual Oedipus attraction to her. Because the thing about Homelander is he didn't have like a regular childhood. He was basically grown in a lab, and as a result of that, of not having a mother or father figure, he's fucked up psychologically and has this weird, like kind of motherly but also love interest attraction to Stillwell, and she uses that to control him. Yeah.
The state kind of collaborates with Vought, but as we saw, of course, they create they use the CIA to kind of go after the heroes and try to kind of bring them down. So the state can kind of get, what I imagine is for the states to do away with a Vought and kind of get control of the superheroes themselves. But they have a few things which I think are funny. One of them is that the CIA liaison person, she says that she fears that pushing Homelander too far will result in thousands of deaths. So yeah, they know he's very volatile, and effectively he's like a superpowered individual in a world where no other superpowered individual can match him, right?
Right.
So like, it's weird because he could just take power if he wanted, but he wants to be adored.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to be
more,
feared.
Right? Yeah, he wants more. Yeah. And yeah, the show shows like the government or state apparatus, like in general, either as like totally corrupt, like the mayor dude that Homelander blows up, or the senator who gets blackmailed by Stillwell. And they're also shown as like incapable with dealing with the superheroes, essentially, because they have no leverage over them, because none of their weapons would work, at least not against Homelander.
Do you feel, for example, that the superheroes could have much more power if they wanted, but it's the fact that Homelander is kind of domesticated by Vought, that he kind of stops them from going out and getting more things than they have, I guess?
Yeah,
because there are superheroes who, obviously, the ones who are in 7, they're like sports stars, right? So they've got millions of dollars, I guess, of money, but they could have it all, right?
Yeah, they could, but they are also, like, to some extent, like, their whole image and their source of income is very closely tied to the company and like all the media propaganda that they're doing for them. So, and you see this in characters like A-Train, who is really, like, he does some really, really questionable and bad shit just to retain his position in the 7, because that's everything to him. right? So even though he's like super fast and he basically can do whatever he wants, like his behavior is still modified by this relationship he has to the company. And he slaves himself out to them in a way, even though he technically doesn't need them, because nobody would catch him.
Because they were groomed by Vought,
exactly.
Right? They were groomed that the only way to get what they wanted was through this company, instead of them using their powers by themselves, I guess. Yeah. So there's a bit about the show that's about celebrity culture, which is kind of very interesting, I guess. Yeah,
it's an interesting choice to make them celebrities, because I think that what they try to do is hammer home the point that these superheroes are not born superhero, but they are made superhero. In the same way that celebrities are not born celebrities, they are also made celebrities by an industry that backs them and props them up.
Yeah, there's a part where so the character, like the naive young woman, who's kind of a parody, I guess, of Supergirl or Batgirl, all those, right? Yeah. She gets selected to be in the Seven, and she always dreamed of being a superhero. In fact, she was a fan of the Wonder Woman type character, and she kind of memorized the biography of her, etc. So she gets to be in the Seven, and then she's sexually assaulted on the first day on the job, and then she kind of and then she gets so upset, and she realizes that her whole life trying to be a superhero was, just a huge scam, and she was trying to become something that doesn't exist, right? Hence the manufactured celebrity culture, celebrity personalities and lives. And then she goes on this event, and she kind of reveals in public that she was sexually assaulted in the Seven headquarters, and she thinks that's going to become like a big thing, right? She's going to bring down superheroes with it, or bring down the institution of superheroes, because she's so disillusioned. But in fact, what happens is that the spin doctors in Vought just say, "Oh, she's perfect for this demographic."
Oh yeah, they turn it into like this female empowerment, and we stand Starlight. That's her character's name, and whatever. And they kind of turn it around on her, like, and that shows that really the naivety of her character. That she feels like, if I only do and say the right things, then good things will happen, and this is all gonna end well. But that's like the consistent theme of her character, is that she tries to do the right thing, but it never really works out, or sometimes it even gets worse.
Yeah, that's because she's a character that's in the wrong book, right?
Yeah, exactly. She's like more like the stock character you'd expect in a DCU comic or whatever. Yeah, like the very clear-cut good and white, good and white, black and white, good and bad. Division between villains and heroes, and she tries to be that hero, right?
Yeah. So we've spoken for about 40 minutes, and we haven't even touched on the protagonist of the show. And I think I'm gonna make an argument that what this means is that I find the protagonist to be very dull. Sorry.
Which
that's just my
protagonist? A butcher?
The boy, the group, the Scooby Gang. Right? Every show has a Scooby Gang that forms to fight the bad guys. And the Scooby Gang, I find them a bit dull, right? I mean, there's like two of them, at least, maybe more, have a revenge plot. Like one of them believes his wife was raped and killed by Homelander. And then there's another one that... of course, our Access character, the everyman character we use to get into the show, Yui, his girlfriend was killed by A-Train I think it was an accident. You could call it an accident. And
I think it wasn't intentional, but it was still pretty fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because so the revenge plot for the leader of the boys involving his wife, that kind of carries across the whole of season 1. That's always present. But we kind of start with Yui's revenge, trying to get revenge for his girlfriend that was accidentally killed. But just off the top of your head, do you even remember his girlfriend's name?
Ooh, Let me think.
Oh, exactly, right? You don't, right? Because she disappears from the show.
That's true. Like she's in the show for
pretty soon.
Maybe
right?
a minute or two, and then she's dead.
Yeah, but then Yui starts kind of going after superheroes because of her, right? Or gets involved with it. But then he just stops thinking about her. She just kind of disappears completely from the story, even as a motif to keep the character going.
Yeah. And I think they kind of had to get rid of that. I mean, because he has a love interest in the show, which is the Starlight character, which creates a bit of tension because he's obviously on the anti-soup team, the boys, and she's on the Seven, the soup team. And like I think in order to make that work, they had to get rid of like his guilt over his dead girlfriend and stuff. They had to get rid of that fairly quickly, and that it kind of works, but not really. Like they have like a couple of scenes where where he sees or he thinks he sees his deceased girlfriend standing somewhere watching him and Starlight talk and stuff. But then eventually these hallucinations or visions or whatever, they just stop, and it's as if like that never happened.
Yeah, so Yui, I think, is a character that's put there for... I mean, it's an access character. It's a character the reader of the comic book or the watcher of the TV show uses to, like a normal person that then has to learn a lot very quickly, right? But it's funny that this character is like a comic book fanboy himself, right? So he
true.
He's like a bit of a man-child, lives with his father.
He has a lot of
like
superhero merchandise and
posters and action figures and all that stuff. And since The Boys, at least the comic book, is a parody, you could say that maybe it was making a little bit of fun of the reader themselves, I think.
Yeah, I think that's and I didn't think about that, but it sounds like a good interpretation of his character, actually.
Yeah, and he's the weakest character, weakest physically, right?
Yeah, but if
everybody else is combat trained or has superpowers.
I think he's supposed to be that guy, though, because he's also very socially awkward, and he doesn't really have many useful skills. I mean, he's good with electronics and such because he worked in an electronics store, but that's about it. In terms of his usefulness.
Although he gets the girl, so
he gets the girl, and he also blows up the first bad guy.
Yeah, because the first superhero kill. Oh. All right, and in terms of resistance, obviously these group of people is financed or used to be financed by the CIA as a covert operation. But isn't it interesting how there aren't more anti-hero movements in the USA? It's hard to believe so few people could have so much power and there will be like no resistance, right?
Yeah, there's very little resistance that is shown. I think there's like one or two scenes where you see like a TV screen on the background, and there's like a news reporter who's reporting critically on some stuff the superheroes did, but that's about it, I think.
Yeah, even like with all the propaganda that we have in our world, right?
Right.
All the cop movies and TV shows, while the cops are the heroes, and the way kind of things are talked about in the news regarding police activity. And still people don't have a very good opinion of cops these days, to say the least, especially in the United States.
Especially these days.
Yeah, especially these days in the United States. September 2020, especially after the summer we've had. And these superheroes actually do a lot more collateral damage than cops in our world do. And there's no kind of, these heroes destroyed my city block trying to catch a purse thief, right? And there's nothing about it. And I think that's an aspect of the show that could be more developed. I think it'd be pretty cool if there was something about it. But we'll see. We're still on season 2, right? There is, however, like a support group for people who've been hurt by super-related collateral damage. But
that was a nice
shown
scene.
Very briefly. Yeah.
And that was a pretty good scene, I think, because they have the Vought writer guy on the self-help group. Like he's shown in the previous scene to be like one of the writer dudes for Vought, who creates like these fake backstories and fake personalities for the superheroes. And then in the scene in the self-help group, it is revealed that he actually got into a relationship with a female superhero who could turn herself into ice. And they were having sexual intercourse. Like she turned accidentally to ice, and it snapped his dick off, which I shouldn't be laughing about, but it was kind of funny in the context of the scene.
It's okay. It's not a real person.
True.
It's okay.
Especially with Butcher going off on them afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of strange that there's not more like public resistance to these like demigods running around doing these things.
Yeah, especially because the government would probably try to promote that resistance, right?
Yeah, but I mean the government is shown as like super corrupt and like basically in on it, because they also profit off of having these superheroes in their cities in order to. It's not really clear whether or not they are actually effective at reducing crime, but at least it's an image boost where like a mayor of a city can say, "Oh, we have this superhero," and then people feel safer. Maybe it's that. I don't know.
Would you like a superhero where you live?
No. None of these guys.
Well,
none of these guys. That's for
only
sure.
if they were impeccably ethical. But I'm sure we would disagree on some kind of fundamental. I don't think any democracy would resist the presence of a superhero.
Yeah, I mean it's just a kind of scary thought to have like these godlike characters running around, and if they want to do something to you, there's literally nothing you can do to stop them. Like that's a really scary thought, I think, and that's for a good reason the main premise of the show, I think.
Okay, would you join the boys then?
Well, I'm not exactly a cold-blooded killer.
Is not a cold-blooded killer either.
That's true, but he kind of turns into one progressively.
Yeah.
Maybe not cold-blooded, but he kills some people, or at least one person.
Accidental blooded killer, I guess.
I mean, he's not like Butch, who's just like so lost on his warpath, as they say, that he's just like Butch is definitely set up to turn bad at some point, and you could argue that he is kind of from the beginning, because it's established that he's not exactly a very truthful person. He apparently tells lies to people in order to manipulate them into helping him and stuff. Like he's a very gray character, not exactly a good guy, more like an anti-hero maybe. Yeah.
I think it's a good show. It's entertaining. There's lots of gore. You can laugh at it as well, or maybe feel bad for the characters. Just go along for the ride. I think that's pretty fair to say. In terms of the themes, there's a lot to chew on. For me, the most interesting part was the transhumanism, and kind of obviously we're not going to get superheroes in our world, at least in the near future. But just the fact that some people can be from birth given such advantages over other people, it's a very real and scary thing for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think
me that wasn't born to have those advantages, of course.
Yeah, I think the part of the show which I enjoy the most is probably the humor, because I'm really big on dark humor, and sometimes even offensive humor. I find that very entertaining. The gore stuff too. And I mean the show as a whole, it's not perfect, which I know is a lame thing to say because it's sort of like a truism. No show is perfect. But I think it's enjoyable enough for me that I definitely gonna continue watching. And as of this date of recording, I think the third season has already been confirmed to be greenlighted by Amazon. So we'll probably see more of the boys in the future.
So just to wrap this up, remember you can email us at voidwavepodcast@gmail.com for any suggestions of things you want us to talk about. We've already received some email with suggestions, which is great, because sometimes we only know what we know, right?
Right.
So we just keep talking about stuff we have seen. Otherwise, there's always kind of very nice surprises to have if you emailed us about them. So far, we've only done kind of audio-visual things, movie, TV show. But from the beginning, we set this out to include books as well. So we're definitely going to get to those at some point. And also news and, discussions that are happening in social media and topics that are coming up in social media. And that we think we can add something to that conversation. So for me, that's it. And goodbye.
Yeah, as always, thank you so much for listening. And if you have any thoughts on this episode, if have you watched The Boys, did you like it, did you not like it, why, you can let us know. And maybe we're gonna do a little like viewer comment question session on the episodes eventually if we get enough responses to it. And yeah, again, thank you so much, and yeah, see you next week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.